Welcome to Machine Minds, where technology and humanity meet. I'm your host, Greg Terrusian, founder of Samson Rose, a recruiting and search business focused on the robotics and AI industries. The Machine Minds show is where we dive deep into the intricate world of robotics and artificial intelligence. As a staffing industry leader with a passion for the frontiers of technology, I'm pleased to be bringing you intimate conversations with the founders, investors, and trailblazers who are at the heart of the AI and robotics revolution. In each episode, we dig into their journeys, the applications of the products they're working on, and the breakthroughs that are shaping our future. Join us as we explore how these machine minds are transforming the way we live, work, and understand our world. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a tech enthusiast, or just curious about this amazing field, you'll learn something new with each episode. Let's delve into the extraordinary. Let's delve into machine minds. Hello and welcome to Machine Minds. I'm your host, Greg Terrusian, founder of Samson Rose, your robotics talent search partner. And on today's episode, I'm joined by Hiten Sonpal, CEO of Rise Robotics. Thanks for being on the show today, Hiten.
Greg, thank you for inviting me to the show. I'm delighted to be here today.
My pleasure. Let's jump into it. Look, Hiten, it's great to have you here finally. I know we've spoken about this for a while, so it's really good to get it on the schedule. You've had a great career, incredible journey across the industry, and now you're obviously leading Rise Robotics, a company at the forefront of transforming heavy lifting technology. Can you share with our guests, our listeners, more about your background and your journey?
Sure. I've been very, very fortunate. I've been working on robotics and automation my entire career. I built my first robot as my senior project in college. It was a chess-playing robot. It was only a prototype, but a magical experience for me and my teammate, Rami Nino. The two of us put this thing together. It was more of an integration project. We took like a printer, two printers that were these XY dot matrix printers and turned it into some sort of robotic plotter that was picking things up. We used a webcam. Don't really remember those. This is before cameras started being put into everything. So we had one of those. We used the crafty chess engine. So that engine was already ready. It was open source. I downloaded it. And then I had to build the electronics to sort of make that all work, where the engine communicated with the motor driver boards, which then moved the arm and picked up the pieces and so on. So that was my first project. And then I didn't look back. After that, I had the opportunity to work at Solus Technologies, which was a design consulting firm in Indiana. And they were working on several robotics projects for clients. One of the projects I was working on was to develop a soldier portable robot. That was in collaboration with DARPA and iRobot. And while we were working on the project, 9/11 happened and the prototypes got deployed to ground zero. Up until that point, I had been all about the tech. And then that experience sort of woke me up to the impact that I could make. And so I decided at that point that iRobot was a special company and that I wanted to work for them, and that opportunity came along a few years later. After I joined iRobot, I had two separate careers there. The first 8 years I was in their government business, and by the end of that, I was head of hardware engineering there, running a team of about 150 people. And then I had another 8 years in their consumer business, and then at the end of that, I was running their robot lawnmower program. And after that, I had the opportunity to work at several startups, Electric Sheep Robotics, who you're familiar with, Graze, who you're also familiar with, and then consulted for a handful of companies in the Boston area, and then finally joined Rise Robotics.
Amazing. What a journey. Yeah. And for the Joe public, average person, they hear iRobot and all they think about are their Roombas, right? But hearing about their government and defense kind of arm, and then the lawnmower as well, like people would just be like, oh wow, I didn't even know that they did that. So that's pretty cool that you saw all areas of the business.
Yeah, iRobot had a pretty diverse business. So initially, when iRobot was founded, they were looking at a lot of different things that they could be involved in. And actually, Colin Angle, the CEO of iRobot, has a slide that he uses in some of his presentations, which lists the 22 failed business models of iRobot. So it's a large number of attempts that they tried and they failed at. And it's actually an inspiring read. It's also funny because some of those things are completely outlandish. Like one of them was, we're going to build space robots that operate on the moon and then sell them to NASA, which, if you take a step back, you realize that's a market of 4, maybe 6
Yeah.
robots, right? Um, but there were other ideas that were more realistic and reasonable. They tried a bunch of them, and then they happened to hit on multiple cylinders at the same time. So Roomba took off, PackBot took off, and then they were working on some B2B plays. There's a company called Ava that's a spin-off of iRobot that was doing telepresence robots. And so they had a bunch of different things incubating inside the company. And then as time went by, you become a public company, and then pressures from Wall Street to get the stock price up, to get the multiples of earnings to your stock price up, mean that you end up being a consumer company, because that's when you get better multiples than if you have a defense wing, and so on and so forth. So that's how iRobot eventually became a consumer-only company.
Interesting. Thanks for that background. So how do you think, looking back, all of those experiences working with large companies, obviously public companies, startups, etc., have shaped your leadership style today?
I'd say one of the best things about iRobot was the number of leaders I met there. The most inspiring leader I met in the government business was Vice Admiral Joe Dyer. He created leadership opportunities for many folks in that business. He's very decorated. You can look at his profile on LinkedIn, done a tremendous amount of service for the United States. In addition, iRobot enrolled me in their leadership development program that was started by a gentleman named Russ Campanello, who's a really well-known HR leader in the Boston area. And then there were several other folks that I could look up to and did, like Carl Calabria, who's a rock star R&D leader in the Boston area, Christian Serta, who's now CEO of SimpliSafe, Paolo Perjanian, who's now CEO of Embodied, Helen Greiner, who's been CEO of 2 other companies after she left, and Rodney Brooks, who's now CEO of Robust AI. So there's just all of these incredible leaders that were in iRobot at the time that I was there, and I took something from each one of their leadership styles.
Amazing. That's really cool. Wow. I didn't realize all of them now, just hearing the names, that they all came from there, but I guess I've seen it on their LinkedIn's. Wow. Okay. And then now you joined Rise Robotics. So I want to shift gears here and start talking about Rise. Can you tell us a bit about the product and also what initially interested you in joining Rise in this CEO role?
Yeah, so Aaron Acosta, co-founder and CEO of Rise, he knew about me through some of the employees here, and we had run into each other at investment conferences. And I told him what I was doing, and then he asked me to be his coach in productization and getting Rise's product to market. And, I thought it was just a consulting gig, but he tricked me. It ended up being an extended interview. I'd do some presentations for him, collect some information from employees and what was going on, and say, here's the presentation. I want you to look over it. Tell me what you think. Something that you might want to take elements from, share it with the team or the board. And then he'd tell me, why don't you come and show this to the board? And so I do that. I did that a couple of times. And then after that, he said, well, the board and I have discussed this, and we think you'd make a good CEO. And I've been looking to step aside for some time, been doing this for a long time, so would love to have you come on board. And he assured me that he was going to stay. And he's got some key strengths in business development, in building relationships with investors, with customers, so I really wanted him to stay. So that's how I got to be CEO of Rise. What interested me in the company was the team, the technology, and the impact I could make, no particular order. In addition to Aaron, the team consists of Kyle, who's the head of design. He's very passionate about the voice of customer. There's Blake, our CTO. He's very passionate about technology. He has a knack for finding ways to beat down physics. There's Tomas, who's a really solid integrator. He takes any idea that he gets, finds sort of the best part of that idea and sort of can build on it. So he's a real glue for the team. And that was really exciting. And then also on the executive team is Tom Phelps, someone that I worked with at iRobot, so I had a relationship. And then I knew a couple of people on the board. So all in all, it was just a very, very good situation from a team perspective. And then initially, when I looked at the technology, I had heard about Rise maybe a decade ago. And a friend of mine who worked here told me about what they were doing, and I actually didn't believe it. I didn't think that you could do something with belts that had been done with hydraulics. And Tyson, my friend who worked here, said, you need to look at the patents. So I looked at the patent, and as I was reading the patents, I was like, wait a minute, this is really interesting. This actually could work. And then I had a chance to visit. Tyson invited me over to show me what was happening at Rise, and I saw how scrappy of a company it was, and the test infrastructure, and the things that were moving, and just saw like an engine that just needed a little bit of help getting their products out to market. So that was exciting. And then as I started thinking about the tech itself, like there's such a huge impact that I can make. So the two main things three, but I'll just start with the top two. The two main things that Rise's products do is they increase productivity. And increases in productivity turn into wealth creation, right? The cost of things goes down, and so you have the same amount of money, but you can buy more because your supply chain is more efficient. So that was one where by making Rise's technology more available, I could improve the quality of life of a lot of people. And then the second one was energy efficiency. So these systems are 3 times more efficient than hydraulics. So you save energy, you enable electrification, and so I can impact climate change if I'm working at this company. And you don't get an opportunity to do that all that often. The third piece that's interesting is, as I've been thinking about the tech and pushing it in different directions, it really enables robotics and automation. So another sort of step change in productivity improvements. And I'll talk about that when we get into the tech.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really awesome. Do you know the founding story? Like what was how the company or the idea came about and what they initially went after?
Yes, it's a fascinating story. The reason why Rise Robotics is called Rise Robotics is that the founding team initially wanted to work on exoskeletons. And as part of solving the problem of building exoskeletons, they had to figure out how to generate a significant amount of power from actuators. And as they started to study these actuators and figure out how to increase the amount of power that they could get to build these exoskeletons, they took inspiration from human muscles. And human muscles use fibers in tension as opposed to hydraulics, which use fluids in compression. So they started to work to design these actuators using steel ropes in tension. And after they had solved that problem, the team realized that rather than create a new market of exoskeletons, they could make a greater impact tackling the existing heavy machinery market and improving the productivity and the efficiency of those systems.
I would not have guessed that from the name or from what you guys are working on now. Wow. Exoskeletons to this. That's really cool. So obviously it's breakthrough, it's that the platform is breakthrough in like energy efficiency. How did the company go from the initial idea to developing this technology? Because I think you're around now for more of like the commercialization, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. That's the role that you're doing. But from developing this tech and now into commercialization, there has to have been like this journey, and then I'm sure, as with every startup, a bunch of challenges along the way. Is there anything that you can share about that?
Sure. As I mentioned, the key problem that needed to be solved was power, right? How do you get force and speed at the same time? And so after a lot of research, one of the first breakthroughs that happened was the discovery of a new kind of belt. So recently, elevators are switching away from steel cable to a new kind of to belts. And these belts are polyurethane, and then they have inside them steel ropes. And the reason why this is different than using steel cable is that you do not get steel on steel contact. So there's not a whole lot of wearing. And then on top of that, the polyurethane protects the steel from environmental things like humidity and so on. And so the steel never rusts. And these belts that are now used for elevators because they're safety rated will last the life of a building. And they consume very little space. So even if you imagine like the elevator room that you see, if you go up to the roof of a building, there'll be like this big structure. Those rooms have gone from being elevator rooms to elevator boxes because these things are so compact and have so much strength. So once the team discovered that, they started to build actuators using these belts. However, these belts have certain challenges. They are strong in one dimension, but they're very weak if you abuse them. Like if you twist them or you introduce a fleet angle, which is to take the belt and sort of twist it this way, then you have a zippering effect and kind of all the ropes break. And so they have to be handled in the right way and they have to be packaged in the right way. So the team spent a fair bit of time figuring out how to take these belts and package them very densely into a configuration that, for the most part, ended up looking like a hydraulic cylinder. And that's where all of Rise's patents are, and how to use these belts to create very compact, dense, high-power actuators.
I had no idea. So a lot of those elevator rooms with a cable is what you're saying because it takes up so much space. That's game changing, even just reducing the size of these things into the same hydraulic pump size. So huge impact straight away.
Yeah, you can imagine like a really large round cable that has to be rated to deal with rusting, that has to be rated to deal with cable on cable friction. Now is turned into a sort of flat belt with the same amount of steel, maybe even a little less steel because the steel doesn't ever make contact with each other. And then because it's parallel, rather than having a large spool, you end up having a smaller but wider spool that still ends up being fairly compact. So it's transformational for elevators, and this design sort of has been around for a while in tires, right? So tires have the same concept. They're like steel on the inside with rubber on the outside. These belts just have polyurethane on the outside. The same concept, and tires last forever, right? I mean, if you think about the abuse that they go through, you've got 2 to 4 tons, and sometimes trucks have even larger masses on it, and then you're constantly, running against the road, and then when you brake, you just have the rubber grinding against asphalt. And I'm just, it's amazing that tech just lasts the way it does.
Yeah, yeah. So how big of an impact has this technology had on industries that rely heavily on hydraulics? Have the people already completely converted, or are there any like measurable benefits so far?
Yeah, so there are other companies that do belt-based actuators, but no one's figured out how to make it as compact as Rise has, right? And my reason for joining is to actually get this technology out to market. So I would say that we haven't yet made the kind of impact we want to make, but over the next few years, we're going to make a huge dent in the universe.
I bet. That's crazy. Okay. Let's talk about shift gears here and talk about hiring and team building for a moment, because as you know, I'm very passionate about it. We were talking offline a little bit as well. And in industries like that you operate in, obviously you've been in robotics your whole career, it thrives on innovation. So hiring the right team is crucial. What's your approach in general? I mean, from your career, other leadership roles that you've had, but then also now at Rise Robotics, what's going to be your approach to building a team?
Yeah, I think it takes all kinds. I've been fortunate to inherit a pretty decent team at Rise already. The way I think about a team and talent is that you need all kinds to make a team work. You need folks that are starters, finishers, innovators, folks that are detail-oriented, folks that are communicators, folks that are problem solvers, folks that are doers, folks that are collaborators. So you get all kinds of diversity in the dimensions that I described, and you start to get magic to happen. But it also takes leadership. And so specifically, the way I think about leadership is head, heart, and hands. The head part being strategy, the heart part being the culture, and the hands part being execution. So on the strategy side, can you be clear with the team about direction? So the team knows where you're headed, what you're going to do, and whether their passions are in line with where you're going. If they are, then then individuals are intrinsically motivated and self-select to be on your team, right? And that's exciting. You also want the team to know what's important as part of the strategy, what problems they can give up, right? If you want to win any battles, your army has to know what hills they don't need to take. Because if they try to take every hill, they'd just be spread too thin. So I think that's a key element of motivating folks, is making it clear to them what they're doing, what they're not doing, what's important, what's not important, and then why it's being done. Then the next bit, as I said, is heart or culture. How do you feel at work? Are the values of the company clear, right? So after I joined Rise, I set in place a few key values. The first one was safety. We have equipment that's very large, and I wanted to make sure that it's safe for the employees and it's safe for our customers to use. And so as part of that, and it's not just enough to just say, hey, we value safety, we have to do something about it. So we actually had the state of Massachusetts come in and do an audit, take a look at our facilities, and make sure that what we were doing was consistent with the safety of the employees. We have added in our design process safety FMEA. So we have a consultant coming in to look at the failure modes of our product and make sure that it's not unsafe, because that's a strong value for me. And the team sees that I've articulated the value and I'm doing something about the value. The next value, for example, for Rise is customer focus, and the one after that is collaboration. I won't get into the details of those, but I just use the safety first as an example. So then we need culture. In addition to the values, we also need norms, right? So you want your team to understand, here's acceptable behavior, here's unacceptable behavior. And one of the things I developed at iRobot with a friend of mine, Ira Renfrew, who's now at Outrider, he's the head of product there, is creating this sort of being explicit about the norms, and then turning that into a check-in where you're doing a pulse check and seeing how the team feels about whether they are living up to the norms. Because the leader can't run around policing the norms that you want to have in the organization. You want buy-in from the team, and then you want the team to self-enforce and call each other out when they're acting in ways that are not consistent with the norms of the business. So I was able to do that with Ira at iRobot when we ran the lawnmower program and iRobot together. And that's something that I'm bringing to Rise as well as part of the culture, which is one of the norms, because they do impact how you feel about work. And then the last piece is execution, right? And so the leader's number one job is, are you removing obstacles so that the team can execute? Or is the team stuck and and you don't know why they're stuck and you're not helping them? That's just not a great way to motivate people. So you have to be out there figuring out what the team needs. Sometimes the obstacles to execution can be things like, I don't have equipment, I don't have a plan, we don't have the right resources. And so as a leader, you have to address all of those things so that that engine can operate at 100% effectiveness. And then when you're able to do that and you're able to communicate that with new talent coming to the organization, they see, they understand, and they get excited about joining the company.
That is great. A very thorough answer. I've never heard the head, heart, and hands thing before, so I really like how you broke those out. It's very smart. And I guess that ties a lot into how you're going to keep this team. Like, hiring is one part, right? Retention is another big part. And you talked about how you feel at work and the culture and all of that, which I believe in wholeheartedly. And you can see it in the best organizations. They're mindful of this stuff, and the people that work there really feel part of something, happy to spend their time on it. They're engaged, and want to do whatever's necessary for the betterment of the team or to get these milestones hit, etc.
Yes.
That's crucial.
When it's working well, the team is working for each other. They're coming in during weekends or staying late because they don't want to let each other down, right? You create this high-performing culture and a high-performing team, and it just runs itself.
Very true. Let me ask you something a little bit off topic, but I think I know what your answer is going to be because we're in the space together. But there's obviously people outside of the robotics industry and sometimes critics and general public, and they argue about automation, robotics, AI. As those increase and adoption happens, the need for human labor is going to decrease, and we're going to replace jobs in some places. Where do you stand on this? And do you believe that companies have a responsibility to consider those job displacements, or a lot of the time they're operating in places where we already have a need, right? There's a huge gap in the market, but what are your thoughts on this on a wider scale?
Yeah, it's. I certainly think that in general, corporate governance in the United States could be better. But rather than go off into that tangent, let's just talk about robotics and automation specifically. I'll say that I don't think that this is a major issue. from what I know about economics, the thing that really creates wealth is efficiency. Because if you just gave everybody twice the money then that they had, then everything would just cost twice as much. You just end up devaluing the currency. So the real gains happen when you can buy more for the same amount of money. And all of that happens through productivity gains. Um, and then the hope is that the productivity gains free up labor that is then used to create new goods and new services. And then you have this virtuous cycle, right, where your life gets better because you have access to things that you need that cost less, services that you need that cost less, and then you can live a better life, right? So if you can buy a home that's twice the quality, twice the energy efficiency, twice the available materials, and for the same amount of money, you're wealthier, even though you don't actually have more money in the bank account. That's the way I think about it.
Love that. That's one of my favorite answers about it. Yeah, no one's put it that way. No, that's true. Because I've asked the question to a number of people, and usually it's like, well, there's already this big gap, that we don't have enough people doing the jobs that we're trying to fill with robots anyway and adding automation. So it's not going to be replacing anyone's job, right? But that is such a great answer. Love that.
Yeah, and I would say that, I'd say that there is going to be displacement, right? And so this is where I don't know that we should be expecting corporations that make the products to have the answer for what happens to the labor. What needs to happen is that government needs to get more involved in the kinds of training that's necessary to take the workers and give them new opportunities. And then there are opportunities for other businesses to make money training people, right? And so it's not a zero-sum game, but it can't be done by the same company that's making the robots because they have expertise in robotics. They don't have expertise in human development, right?
Yeah, that's true. It's a good point. Let's look at the future for a little bit. If we're looking ahead, what trends in robotics and automation are you most excited about right now? Is there a particular technology or direction that you believe will be transformative in the heavy industries?
This is a good question. I might sound biased, but I think that Rise is going to make a huge impact simply because our product is 3 times as productive, 3 times as efficient, 80% of the weight, automation ready. So I think it's going to have a big impact on heavy industries. Because the thing that's holding heavy industries back from being cleaner is the inefficiency of the hydraulic systems, which drives up the cost of batteries, which makes that transition economically unviable. So anything we can do to cut down the size of batteries, to cut down the size of charging infrastructure, can enable the transformation of these industries. In addition to the tech, of course, there's also the legislation piece. You have to sort of seed the flywheel, and you have to have some customers that are buying it so that things take off. Like with Tesla, you had the Roadster. A few people bought the Roadster. That demonstrated that electric cars were here, that they could deliver reliability, that they were fun to drive. And then that turned into a sedan and SUV and so on and so forth. And now it's a whole industry that's transforming, but you needed that first thing that happened. And Tesla also received funding from the US government to create this transformative technology. So in some way, this flywheel has to get started, but once it gets started, the cost of the transition will also come down.
Yeah. How are customers reacting to the shift from away from hydraulic systems? Is it something that's very welcome? Do they see the benefit, or is there pushback?
I think it depends on how your personal economic situation is tied to hydraulics. If you're currently making money selling hydraulic equipment, then the transition away from hydraulics is an annoyance. If you're using hydraulic products and you have to deal with the leakage, the inefficiency, the maintenance, the PPE that you have to wear around some of these systems because they're pressurized and they're not really safe for humans to be around without protection, you start to think about, hey, can I get something that's better? So, I think it depends on, how you're going to be affected by it personally.
Yeah, that's a good point. Are there any challenges that you think the robotics industry as a whole will face in the next decade, or if there's any uh, concerns or risks that you believed are like underappreciated?
Yeah, I think of two big ones. The first one is hype, because some of the robotics and AI technologies are being hyped in ways that I think are unrealistic and will lead to a similar kind of bubble bursting like happened with EVs, right? So there are so many companies that are trying to build these autonomous vehicles, and now there's really only one winner so far, and it seems like it's going to be Waymo. But everyone else has struggled, and they've struggled because of number two, which is safety. So building all these autonomous systems, folks aren't thinking about what it really takes to make these systems certifiably safe. And I think that's going to hold the market back. And sometimes investors rush in and say, hey, this is so cool, you can do all of these things. Yes, they've seen the happy path, they've seen this humanoid robot take a dish and wash it and stack it one time, and no one's really asked what happens to the human standing next to it if the robot is a glitch. How do you prevent that from happening without making the robot less effective, without destroying the economic value that the robot was providing? So I think safety is a big thing that has to get answered here, and it's not an easy problem.
Yeah, yeah, that's a very good point. It's come up a few times. I know there's some companies working on the safety element, especially when you're having robots in close proximity to humans, not these AMRs and then also humanoids, etc. Not just these fixed in place single purpose things. But even those, you need a lot of safety to work right next to one. So yeah, it's a very good point.
That's a huge opportunity, safety systems. Someone can crack that code and have a product out there. Oof, that would be amazing.
Yeah. So before we wrap, let's talk about the future for Rise Robotics. You guys are obviously making big strides today. You've come on board, helping to commercialize and take it to the next level. How do you plan to scale both the technology and the business?
So on the technology front, we are making sure that we're more engaged with our customers in driving the direction of the technology. So the first thing we're doing is launching a developer's kit that will allow our customers to take our cylinders, quickly interface them with the computer, use a UI to test all the claims we're making, the speed, the efficiency, the weight, all the sensing that comes in out of the box with the cylinders. And then we're also putting the cylinders into an application that we're testing with end users so that we have real world data of these cylinders being deployed in a system, being used, that we can share with new customers. And then on the business front, after putting in place a strategy, realigning our projects, making sure that I've hired the right teammates, I'm now looking to raise money to accelerate the growth of our business. We know what projects we want to work on. We have a roadmap, and we just need to go get the funds and execute. And so we're looking at a community round because we have a huge community of folks that are interested in the Rise technology. And if there are any folks that are listening to your podcast that are interested, we would invite them to follow Rise on LinkedIn. And then as soon as we finalize the details of our community round, we'll announce it. And anyone that's interested in this tech will have an opportunity to invest and help us scale our business. We're also looking at family offices and traditional VCs and so on and so forth. But there's been this untapped group of folks that have been excited about Rise, and we want them to participate in our success.
That's really cool and unique. Yeah, we'll link everything in the show notes so people can find all of this easily. And beyond technology, what broader impact do you hope Rise Robotics will have? And do you think, or do you see that this technology will shape the industries in ways that go beyond just the efficiency gains?
Yeah, I think we talked about them before. I still think the two biggest impacts are wealth creation and climate change, right? Those are the two things that I find exciting about Rise. And I think we can make a significant impact there.
Amazing. Well, look, Hiten, it's been great having you on the show. Thank you so much for sharing your insights, your journey, all your experiences. You mentioned the LinkedIn page. Is there anywhere else where people can find you and Rise?
Yeah, we have a website, riserobotics.com, that has some of the technology that we've done. We kind of explain how it all works, some applications, the team. So it's a cool website. You should check it out.
Amazing. And from someone with such a long and successful career in the space, is there any advice that you would give to aspiring leaders or aspiring founders in the robotics and tech industries?
Yeah, so for founders, you just have to embrace the grind, right? Reading a recent blog post, and I wish I remember who had written it, but the person said that when you're looking at the thing you want to be doing, wait, when you're trying to figure out what you're going to be good at, you want to find and understand for yourself what discomfort you're willing to take, because it's not going to be easy. And if you can handle a certain level of discomfort doing something, then you can truly be good at it. So if you want to be a bodybuilder, you have to embrace the discomfort of being in the gym and the challenges that come with it, including pushing yourselves, including injuries, including making sure you're eating right. All of that is not comfortable. But if you can embrace it, then you can have a body that looks great. So similarly, if you want to be an entrepreneur or a founder, you just have to embrace the challenges that come with that, which involve fundraising, a lot of crises, lots of highs and lows, challenges in building a team, unexpected things that happen that are outside of your control, but you still have to deal with them. So it's really important to embrace that if you want to be a founder. And then for leaders in tech, what I would say is that stuff in tech is changing so quickly that you have to embrace change and a growth mindset. And recently read a quote that said, life begins where your comfort zone ends. And that's really true for tech, because every day I find I'm encountering something new and I'm awkward about it because I don't understand it. And I have to sort of, embrace that I'm outside of my comfort zone and then pick it up and then go from being uncomfortable about it to being an expert and then move on. And that's going to happen again and again and again. And you can't be a leader in tech if you don't embrace that.
That is great. Great advice. Look, Hiten, thank you so much. I know we're at time. It's been a pleasure having you on the show. We'll obviously keep in touch. Hopefully I'll see you soon in person, and go from there. Thanks again.
Thank you, Greg. Looking forward to catching up in person as well.
Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.